So this is what I'm aiming for. This is my Bryce scene, and this is what I've got in my Octane scene. And I'm going to now sort of start sorting these views out. So I'll get rid of this render target. So we're going to go for a final setup, which means I'm going to look at the we'll lower it down to 512 by 512. So I've got a square view. Then I need to, hello, I seem to have lost my emission for this. I'm sure that was working last time. I've had this effect before where you have to unplug some things and plug them back in to get them working again. Let's see if that was the problem. There's the sun, downlight. I'm sure that was doing something before. Maybe the files become corrupt. Okay, well I'll close that down. I won't save the changes. You can see I'm getting set up to record again, which I am doing. I'll launch Octane again, file, recent files. Let's open this one up. Takes a little while to load. You can see it's hardly using any memory. Right, let's pick one of these. So that's that one. That's that one. No, I don't know. I'll have to watch the last video carefully and see what's happened there, because I seem to have lost my emission from this downlight. Let's see. It's distribution power. Oh, the downlight's now got 2 input nodes. That's strange. Now, do you remember I was struggling to get the sun? I wonder if they've got to have duplicated the sun now. So, yeah, the sun's there. So I was saying about trying to get it so that it could export it with 2 nodes, and then I could combine the thing. Well, it seems that it did, but it didn't manage to update it before. So if I take my sun input there, it's all very confusing, isn't it? I can now light the sun and the downlight in one object, which has saved me an input pin. So I can just move that one along there, tidy one of the pins up that can remove input there. So yes, I'm curious. And I've got my downlight again, and I've turned the brightness up there, not the volume. Turn the brightness up there a bit, so I'll turn it back down again. Get back to a nice bluish sort of ambient light. So yes, not entirely bug free, are you, Octane? Okay, let's see. I can pick my targets. I'll aim and get my target picking thing, and I'll get it on top of this post in the middle, which so I can pick my target and really zoom it into the centre of that post there. Well, I don't know which render target I've got selected here. Is it this one? Okay, I'll get rid of this other one because it's only confused matters and select this one. So that's looking at the camera post now, and then I can just unplug that camera post, toggle the picking thing, and then I'll roll my camera view back. Now it auto focuses, but if I'm aiming through the middle of this arch, it's going to auto focus on the sun. But I've got a control here, so if I pick this picker, I can target the depth of field onto that. Though I won't have much depth of field effect because I just tend to miniaturize my archway. So that's that done, and I'll unselect that now, so I don't actually select the depth of fieldy thing. Oh, I was modifying this, wasn't that? Must have been on the other render target, or in the other file. I was a bit confused by the fact that it had changed between saves, which it shouldn't do. So I've got my render target selected, and at the top here I've got my field of view control, so I'll wind the field of view in. Oh look, you see, if I want it set up as the other scene, I need to get this 2D face out of the way. Now I did mention that repositioning things was a bit awkward, particularly now since those 2 objects are combined. So if I move this 2D face up, it's going to move the sun up too. If I can move it towards me, it'll move the sun towards. That's a bit really inconvenient for that to decide at this point that I can now have those 2 objects combined. Oh well, we'll see about repositioning. You'll see what a nuisance it is. So I'll create a node and objects, and it's in placement, and it's got an input and an output on the geometry. So I'll take my geometry and plug it into placement, and take the output and plug that into the geometry group. And now on placement, when that's selected, I've got these transforms, and if I hold the shift key down, I think it does it at a smaller value. So let's try moving the X value. See, where's that? We've got no idea where that's going. So I'll copy the render target again and have this one selected, so I can get I'll repick So where's my pick on the object there? Should be able to zoom out then. Alright, get outside this view, turn the picker off. So on this left one which one have I got selected? Okay, on this right one is the view from the camera, this left one is the view from the outside. Go back to placement, reset that value to 0 so I can get some kind of handle on where this is going. I just want to creep this back in that direction, but I don't know which of these is going to do it. Trusting that Y is going to be up, but we'll find out now. See, the amount of movement you get on this is really startlingly rapid, and there's no way to adjust it easily. Maybe it's control that allows you to move it, not shift. Shift makes it move quicker, possibly, or just at the same quick rate. So Y is up and down. I don't want to try up and down. I want to try and figure out forwards and backwards, so just that way a little bit. So hold the control key down. That's the one that does it. That's left and right. That's not too bad. Reset that one to 0, and then if I creep this back and bring the sun, it can touch the haze there, and hopefully that'll have got it out of the way a bit. So back to my in-view render target, whichever one that is, this right-hand one. And you can get the downlight, but you can't see it over the edge there. Right, I'm going to increase the downlight, whichever this material was. I think this is the downward light. It's nice to be able to change the names of these so you can find them. So I've called that downlight because I missed the N out. Like a fool. Right, increase the power. So that's my equivalent of the ambient light from the HDRI, since it's not providing enough because it's mostly around the front here. So I've got a bit of that going. I was going to see about a couple of things, which is that's the one I want. If I plug post effects into that then, so add node post processing, so I've got a node for post processing, I'll know which one's my main scene render and that's my outside scene render in case I need to make some more adjustments, which is entirely likely. And I've also in the render target here got some other adjustments that I might use, like this white balance, which is also linked with a picker just here. So if I select this picker, I can white balance it for different parts of the sky, and that has the advantage that if you look at my original one, we're getting closer to something that looks like that. So that looks okay now. The noise problem I'm going to solve by plugging in PMC, but before I do that, let's use post-processing, switch it on so it's working. So now that's got a bit of glow, that's cutting out where the haze problem is a bit. I'm going to increase the glare power, so I've got this effect like in the original scene, but generated in post-processing, and I blur those a bit. Spectral intensity is like a colour shifting effect. I don't know whether I want much of that. I'll just do it slightly red. Okay. I'm going to narrow the field of view slightly, so that's back in this camera control. So just framing this up a bit better. Turn that picker off there. So what other controls? Well, there is in here the kind of controls you get with a camera for exposure and f-stop. Horror would probably understand those better than I do. So I'm just going to use this post-processing, which on my own advice, you should always look at the effects for a bit and then reduce them, because you always tend to keep adding effects when you should handle them very carefully. Like I say, this continue rendering and you can modify these as you go along. So what I'll do at this point is take the PMC kernel and plug that in there. That's then going to keep rendering, and so long as I don't modify the view or modify any of the materials, I can keep coming back to it and changing the post-processing, and I can also change some of the camera settings. Unfortunately, I haven't found any way, and I don't know yet even if it's possible, of saving a partially completed render. Octane seems to have to do it all, and you can save the images as you go along, but if you accidentally change something, so I can lock that, for example, so I can lock that view off, then it starts re-rendering again, and if you're like 30 hours into a render, that can be a little bit annoying. But you can save, so I could save it before I start messing with the process and some of these render target ones, which might reset it or not, I don't know. Like, you couldn't change the field of view, but you could change some of the exposure settings, I discovered. So let's see, how is that looking? Not too bad, it's not too badly framed. We'll give it a go at that. As you can see here, this is the the sampling, and because it's going through PMC it'll take a while, and it's saying 1.5 hours, but even then it might not get rid of this noise. So I'm going to let it cook for a while, and then we'll come back to it and see what the noise situation is. You have got the option here of increasing the sampling. So even if it gets to 16,000 samples per pixel, you can improve it still to take it up to 64,000 samples per pixel. In tests I've done to really test, to kind of just test the sampling in it, that's not enough. I could have done with allowing it to go on for longer, even though it's been rendering for 20 hours. And you know, 20 hours would give you a very good Bryce render with transient rendering. Bearing in mind, we're talking about pathfinding transients, even though it's got some extra filtering. By the time you're doing these sort of renders, and I admit that Octane has got some material features that Bryce doesn't have, that Bryce could really do with, but certainly in terms of the quality of lighting and the render quality, fairly comparable. And although you know, Bryce is long in the tooth as far as its interface is concerned, but you can tell that just merely by the size of the interface. In other respects, like the image-based lighting and the premium render, it's still pretty good. Okay, so anyway, waffled on a bit too much there, sorry. I shall pause the video here and we'll come back to it and see how it's going in an hour's time potentially. Okay, well here we are an hour and 6 minutes later, and there's still some noise in this, so it could do with going for longer. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to file, and I'm going to save the scene file, which doesn't save an image with it, so just save that. So that's saved my scene file with these settings. And then here I've got the option to save the render to an image file, or we've got to copy to clipboard. We can save it to an image file. So the 16-bit and 8-bit output, so obviously 16-bit with a greater colour depth will be better if you're going to do some post work, like you could get that fading effect like I got in Bryce with the filters, but it will probably be easier to set that up in post work now. So I'll just save this version, so this can be version 1, and then we'll try and change some settings without upsetting this and resetting the sampling. And it's going to need more sampling than that, I think. So on PMC, which is selected, even if it hit the limit, it would just wait there until I set the samples up. So I'll set the samples up to 64,000. So that's going to be another 5.5 hours if I wanted to go that far. But in all likelihood, I'm probably going to upset it now by modifying the post. My post-processing should be okay. I should be able to make changes to this without it. But I'm going to try and modify the render target as well. Perhaps experiment with some of the settings in that on this green blob, which is the imager, and I think that should allow me to do it. I wonder if I should create an imager node so I don't have an accident and touch things that would change the render. Okay, I'll do post-process first, and then I'll save it again. So let's turn the glare power up, because that was sort of getting lost. You could see that could be a rather extreme effect. Because the sun's such a large light source, these are not very fine. If I made the sun a smaller point, then I get very fine starburst effect out of that. So I don't want too much of that effect. We've got the bloom as well, which really gives you a sense of the sun's power in there, so that's okay. But as I said before, don't overdo these effects. So I'll save that now, so I can save this as version 2. So there's some OpenEXR version on Turn Map Turn. That's obviously a HDRI format, which I've not played with yet. That's interesting to know. So I'll change this as version 2. Windows doesn't seem to have the ability to preview a 16-bit PNG properly a lot of the time. It will fill it in sometimes, but not always. So that's a version 2. Right, let's. I'm gonna risk it. Okay, I'm gonna add a node, and it's going to be. I'm going to try and get one of those green nodes. So is that camera? That's a blue node, isn't it? So I want an imager. That's a green node. So take this camera imager, and if I plug that into the render, oh yeah, it's okay. It's not modified. It's still rendering. So I should be able to play with all the imager settings now safely along here without modifying the render and resetting it. So vignetting, that's handy, because that will give me my fading effect. Oh, look at that. Yes. So though it's not just fading from the top, at least that there's a hot pixel removal. That's set high. So let's see if I set that down, will there more hotter pixels? Ah, so I can actually filter with this the noise out. I can see that it's softening the image a bit, but I can filter the noise out. That's nice. Now this is this white balance which you were looking at before. So if I can change it manually here. So let's see if I take more blue out, it'll go more to the yellow end of the spectrum by the looks of it, or is it the other way around? Ah, that's more like it. So I've made it a blue colour, and that's tinted it towards yellow. So I suppose that's a bit like absorbing. Dithering presumably is to do with whether on 8-bit or 16-bit format. Right, let's have a play with exposure and f-stop. Okay, oh, you can see the sun now and the haze. That's gone a bit dark. So what's an f-stop? Is that? I'm not really sure what that is. Yeah, Horror would know. He's good at camera stuff. It's I just seem to be doing very similar things to this in a way. Okay, right, I'm lost here. I don't know what I'm doing with these. I'll be honest, I don't know. I'm just playing with the controls. Let's see, ISO. That's film speed. So this is if it's more like that, must be slower speed. Okay. Gamma I do know. I don't know what gamma I should have either. I think I just leave it at 1. Right, so how is that looking? Well, a lot less noisy as it happens. I wonder if I unplug that, will it restore my original? No, it's not. It's lost the original whatever that was. So I've lost those settings, but I've got these new settings. I think that vignetting effect is a bit too strong. That's my theory, and I'd like it to go. I wonder if I can use this colour picker safely and get the white balance, or whether it's going to upset things. I'll save this again. So I'll save this. I'll call this version 3. So I won't have to render it as long by 3 as long as I thought, because I can filter with this removing hot pixels option there. So I just want to try a yellowier version, perhaps with a bit more bloom on it. So I'll unlock that, select that picker there. So I've just got that, and I'll pick. So that's gone yellow, and then I'll lock it back up again. I'll select the picker, lock it back so I don't accidentally. So that's given me a yellowier version. I'll use post-processing, and I'm going to increase the glare slightly. So this is my extreme effects version, and that will be my final version. So I'll save that, and that can be version 4. And that, you'll be pleased to hear, is the end of this video, more or less. So that's saved. I don't need to continue rendering. You can just pause the renderer here if you want. And I can save these settings again. So file, I'll save as, so I've got a different set of settings. So I'll call that number 8 for my file. Right, I'm going to attempt this project again, but not with this scene, because that'd be really boring, because I've got some ideas that have formed while I was doing this. I was wondering if I could capture part of the scene and the backdrop and the Bryce sky all in one thing with the spherical mapper. Perhaps as a HDRI image, and then use that as a light source, or just map it onto a sphere, onto the inside of a sphere, so that will bring the horizon in a bit and make it round, and then have a water plane and a few terrains that are converted using the process that I sort of uncovered in the second video in part 2. I think that was it, when I was working out how to do the... Or was that the first one? I've lost track now, sorry. Right, okay then, that's the end of the video. I hope you found that interesting and not too boring, if you've managed to sit through all 5 parts of these. Otherwise it'll just be me watching it in a few weeks' time when I've forgotten it all and need to try and solve the problem again. Righto, that's the end.